Hello everybody, you're welcome back again to the Reggae Appreciation Society. There are lots of unsung heroes in the rich history and evolution of Jamaican and indeed reggae music, but I believe the most underappreciated of them all is the fabulous subject of today's video. At the very dawn of Jamaica's music industry, a bizarre twist of fate saw him take a strategic role in the island's first recording studios, where he would single-handedly arrange and play on an estimated 1,500 songs in less than 5 years. His musical IQ was at a superhuman level, and his mastery of the guitar was simply out of this world. His influence on Jamaican guitarists was simply astonishing and second only to the great Ernest Ranglin. Before his time, Jamaican guitarists would typically pull their strings upwards while playing, as you can see here in this footage of the guitarist here doing his thing, while a young Jimmy Cliff is rocking the audience at Kingston's legendary Sombrero Club. Lynn Taitt instead strummed his guitar strings in a downward movement, a style which got adopted universally by all players after him. A literal king among musicians that commanded massive respect, legendary ska group the Scatterlights admired him so much that they invited him to become their leader, but he would decline it out of humility. This man achieved countless exploits in his sparkling career, but the one he's given the most flowers for was single-handedly engineering the evolution of Jamaica's popular music when he crafted and played on what was the very first Rocksteady song in 1966. He's one titan that deserves way more credit than he's been given. So without further ado, let's take a look at the fabulous Lynn Taitt, the master guitarist and the inventor of Rocksteady. Now, despite his exploits in Jamaica, his story began on June 22nd in 1934 in San Fernando in Trinidad and Tobago. He was born near Lynn Taitt, the second of 4 brothers, to a shipwright father who sang in their local church choir. He grew up amidst the popularity of steel pan bands in that country, and by his early teens was given a gift of some old pans by the leader of a band that he and his friends used to follow around. He had displayed a high musical IQ ever since he was a toddler and took to that instrument very quickly despite his mother's disapproval. He and some friends soon formed a steel pan band called the CBs that became popular in no time, performing at school fairs and events all over the island. In fact, he got so good that he won first prize in a national competition as a solo player in 1956. Now a boss with a steel pan, he would teach himself to play the cuatro, an indigenous stringed instrument very similar to the ukulele. And in no time, a friend who saw his potential gave him a guitar which had been abandoned by a drunken sailor, and he soon mastered it in record time. And by the end of the 1950s, he was a guitarist in a jazz group called the Dutchy Brothers, before he formed his own band called the Lynn Taitt Orchestra. However, a twist of fate would soon embed him right at the heart of the most powerful musical engine in the Caribbean. In 1962, he was invited to embark on a 2-week tour of the Caribbean that was to culminate in Jamaica right on time to participate in the island's independence celebrations. As the story goes, Taitt and his band were left stranded by his tour managers who had absconded back to Trinidad without paying them a dime. On the surface, a crisis, but one that soon led to a massive breakthrough. During his show, Taitt dazzled audiences with his intricate, genius playing skills with the downward guitar strokes as opposed to the upward strokes that all ska guitarists in Jamaica were used to. And aesthetically, he was a delight to watch, as he was the first person to bring a sleek, flat-body guitar into Jamaica, where everyone else used semi-hollow, boxy jazz guitars. Byron Lee, who incidentally was the promoter of the Independence show and an eagle-eyed businessman, saw the opportunity in a flash and made Taitt the guitarist in a band called the Sheiks. Those were the early days of ska and its explosive reign in Jamaica, and Lynn Taitt took to this new sound like a duck to water, dazzling both his audiences and fellow musicians. He soon formed his own band called the Comets and was soon in high demand to do work as session instrumentalists in Jamaica's early studios like Federal Records, Studio One, and Treasure Isle. And the first hit song he played on was Shank I Shake for trumpeter Baba Brooks that came out in 1964. At the time, Ernest Ranglin was in England doing some work with Chris Blackwell and a then unknown singer called Middy Small. So Taitt emerged as the best guitarist in Jamaica and was such a maestro that his fellow musicians practically worshipped the ground that he walked on. In fact, in June 1964, Super Ace studio backing band the Scatterlights had a meeting in which they decided to officially form a group as recording artists, and in that period, Lynn Taitt had played with them very often at Studio One, and they voted unanimously for him to be their leader. but when they approached him, he declined the offer as he felt that honor should have gone to a Jamaican. By 1965, he had fallen out with Coxsone Dodd and would go on to arrange as well as play on hundreds of songs at Dodd's rival Duke Reid's Treasure Isle Studios, the WIRL Studios, that was then owned by eventual Prime Minister Edward Seaga over the course of 1 year. He was the busiest ska guitarist and arranger on the island, leading into 1966, when Ken Curry, the owner of Federal Records, would invite him to come over to his studio as leader of the in-house band. He formed a new band of musicians called the Jets in February 1966, at the very peak of the ska era. But Taitt would soon spark the next phase of Jamaica's musical evolution. One morning, a young singer called Hopton Lewis came to the studio and told Taitt he had a song called Take It Easy, a musical message to all the rude boys in Kingston's ghettos to stop causing trouble, a track in the mold of the Wailers Simmer Down. Taitt loved this song but felt it was a poor match for the frenetic pace of ska. Taitt's band tried to record it over a ska rhythm, but it didn't work. So on impulse, he told his pianist, Gladstone Anderson, to slow down the pace. It worked beautifully and the band followed suit. And the end product was Take It Easy, a masterpiece that sold 10,000 copies in the weekend it was released and went to #1 in Jamaica's charts. This song wasn't just a slowed-down version of ska, but a more soulful, infectious upgrade that fascinated the entire island and caught on like wildfire, with the biggest artists in Jamaica all scrambling to get on board this new train that became known as Rocksteady. After arranging songs like Girl I've Got a Date by Alton Ellis, Derek Morgan's Tougher Than Tough, and Roy Shirley's Hold Them, which all became massive hits, the Rocksteady era was officially in full swing. Every major producer in Jamaica was onto it, like Coxsone Dodd, who produced The Train Is Coming for Ken Booth, or Leslie Kong, who produced 007 for Desmond Dekker, or even Duke Reid, that led that charge with a slew of harmony trios like the Paragons, the Techniques, and the Silvertones. Lynn Taitt was the most in-demand instrumentalist of that new era and played on more than 1,500 songs, a number that music historians even feel is a conservative figure. He was an extremely innovative figure, and by the beginning of 1968, he was even playing on early reggae hits like Hold Me Tight for Johnny Nash and Little Nut Tree for the Melodians. But at the very peak of his influence, Taitt traveled to Toronto in August in 1968 to work as a band leader at the West Indies Federated Club for a while, and like he had done in 1962 when he came to Jamaica, that short trip turned permanent. And it's no coincidence that the Rocksteady era ended as soon as he moved, and the age of reggae would kick in, as guitarists like Hux Brown, who were all heavily influenced by him, would continue where he stopped. He opened up a studio in his own home and would record music sporadically over the years, and even rejoined his old pals, the Scatterlights, when they went on a world tour in 1989. He would stay active on the touring circuit and made critically acclaimed appearances at the Montreal Jazz Festival in 2002 and 2006, and he kept busy doing what he loved best until he passed away in January 2010 in Montreal at the age of 75 after suffering a fatal heart attack during a battle with pneumonia and cancer. This man was simply a musical genius par excellence, an innovator and a master guitarist, and ironically, his accomplishments were more popular than his name, but definitely was one of the most influential figures in the history of Jamaican music, and by implication, world music itself. So there you have it. Thank you for watching this video today. Please leave a like, subscribe, and until next time, Jah bless.